This could be either proof of extraterrestrials or an elaborate hoax. It's supposed to be an alien killed in a UFO crash landing almost 50 years ago. The owner of this film claims an Army photographer recorded this alien autopsy after the so-called Roswell incident in 1947. Something unusual did happen near this mountain in the desert near Roswell, New Mexico in the first week of July 1947. Witnesses reported an unidentified flying object in the night sky. This was after a rash of reported UFO sightings nationwide. A rancher found something crashed in a ravine about 75 miles northwest of Roswell. Roswell Army Air Base was the home of the world's only combat squadron armed with atomic bombs, the B-29s of the 509th Bombardment Group. The base commander dispatched his intelligence officer to the crash site. Then this news flashed around the country.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Witnesses claim the wreckage was not like anything they'd ever seen before.
It looked like stainless steel. It was real shiny. Then it became pink and then purplish and then almost black. It looked like it had been subjected to some high degree of heat.
Years later, other people claimed they'd seen several small alien bodies in the crash. Witnesses claim that a recovery team brought the bodies here to this hangar, that they were kept under strict military guard. They claim the bodies were then secretly loaded on a military airplane and flown away for autopsy. Is this film of one of those autopsies? This footage has been broadcast in more than 30 countries, in the U.S. 4 times on the Fox network. It comes from British film collector Ray Santilli. He claims he got it from a former U.S. Army cameraman who had hidden it for more than 40 years. The film yields some tantalizing clues not mentioned in the network broadcast. Is this a fake?
Normally, pictures of an autopsy or even an operation by the military is photographed in color.
Retired Colonel Dan McGovern was the Army's leading cameraman for top-secret projects back in 1947.
The whole thing is a hoax. It's just a lot of hogwash.
You may have heard the experts on network TV, but over the next few Fridays, our investigation will continue into the so-called alien autopsy. We'll examine this film frame by frame for authenticity. Was it really shot in 1947?
The biggest thing is the way it's shot. And it looks like videotape. And this doesn't look like 60 millimeter to me. It just looks like video to me and transferred through a computer or something.
Is this authentic autopsy technique? And what about the appearance of the body?
It's not coming up like typical skin. It's very stiff.
And we've discovered new details of procedures in top-secret military photography in the late 40s, including once top-secret UFO projects, details that may help you decide if the so-called alien autopsy really is an authentic military secret. But does this film cast doubt on the incident at Roswell and the stories of a UFO crash? We'll look into the account of this self-described eyewitness.
I don't know if it was a UFO. I mean, if it was a military project that went sour, I don't really know what happened.
The Air Force maintains the Roswell crash was nothing more than a secret balloon project, but investigators have doubts.
If it was just the debris from a balloon, there's some very credible military people, former military people, who are blatantly lying.
Even though the events here at Roswell Air Base happened almost 50 years ago, details are still coming to light. Join us for our ongoing investigation that will help you decide whether this is fraud or the find of the century. I'm John Fowler, and that's segment 2 for tonight. This is supposedly an autopsy of an extraterrestrial killed in a 1947 New Mexico UFO crash. These otherworldly images, now broadcast around the world, supposedly came from an unnamed U.S. Army photographer who quietly kept 22 rolls of top-secret film for more than 40 years. Ridiculous, says this man. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Dan McGovern was one of the military's most accomplished photographers of top-secret projects. Assigned to document Nagasaki and Hiroshima in secrecy only days after the atomic blasts of 1945, McGovern says secret film was always tightly controlled.
Classified material, especially if it's secret or top secret, is controlled from one top secret control officer to another. Even the raw stock of film is taken into the darkroom and put it into a footage counter that counts feet and frames.
So, could the Army fail to collect 17 minutes of top-secret footage?
Every frame has to be accounted for.
So it's not possible?
It's not possible. It's impossible.
Bob Kiviat produced the Alien Autopsy TV program that ran on the Fox network. He has not talked to the supposed autopsy cameraman, but says the photographer replied on videotape to Kiviat's questions.
He claims this event happened, that he was sent by commanding officers to a site in that region to literally photograph all activities around this crashed saucer and these creatures.
How could the cameraman keep this supposed secret Army footage?
In that time period that according to the cameraman, that the footage was shot and processed, he was sort of without a home. He didn't have a division to report to. He contacted the members of the military at the time, who you would contact and say, where do I return the footage to? And they never got back to him. He's unsure about why he has the footage, although he does appear very nervous on the tape.
The autopsy film is black and white, but experts say military autopsies in those days were filmed in color. Even this World War II combat film is in color. And Dan McGovern, who shot this film over Germany, says even in combat, photographers always filmed an ID slate like this at the beginning of every roll of film. But nowhere in the so-called Alien Autopsy is there a single identifying slate. And McGovern says the autopsy camera work is simply not Army quality.
It's amateurish, to say the least. The cameraman should have been on a tripod and in focus in a certain place at the same time. Normally, there would be another camera.
If indeed the cameraman's story is true, that this was a crazy scene that they were trying to get a handle on, I think he may have to throw everything out in terms of what would have been normal standard operating procedure.
In July 1947, Dan McGovern was in charge of the Army's Pentagon Photographic Unit. The owner of the Alien Autopsy film claims it was the work of an Army Pentagon cameraman. McGovern says that he would have prepared the cameraman's orders and that it never happened.
So the whole thing is phony. If they would give me some name, full name, rank and serial number, who was the man who shot it? I've heard names, but the whole thing is a hoax. It's just a lot of hogwash.
But the supposed autopsy cameraman remains adamant.
Anytime we asked a question that seemed to suggest that his story doesn't make sense, it wouldn't be, he just kept saying, just look at the film.
Later in our continuing investigation, we'll examine that film up close for clues of authenticity. McGovern was also the project officer for the military's secret desert search for photographic proof of UFOs. He says he saw more than one.
A UFO comes from below the horizon at a tremendous angle, about 45 degrees, tremendous speed, and suddenly changes direction to opposite from which it came.
You've seen that?
Seen these things.
Things he says to this day he still cannot explain. That story, plus what a coroner and movie special effects masters have to say about the alien autopsy when our investigation continues next Friday. I'm John Fowler, and that's segment 2 for tonight. It was the late 40s, and from secret sites in the New Mexico desert, post-war America tested her new weapon technology, rockets, missiles, and of course the ultimate weapon. At the same time, a rash of so-called saucer sightings swept the nation, and unexplained things flashed across the New Mexico sky.
There was all sorts of mysterious things going on there.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Dan McGovern headed once secret Project Twinkle, on round-the-clock desert alert to photograph UFOs.
We had a special ring on the phone, a beep, 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 that would ring, and then you would get out of bed and rush then to find.
In those days, only the U.S. had the atom bomb. The Russian scare was mushrooming, and at bomb labs, they worried UFOs were Soviet spy craft. McGovern says he used special cameras.
It wasn't possible to get pictures.
But
We tried.
But you've seen what people call UFOs.
I have seen these several times, but they come from below the horizon. And I haven't seen any of these so-called things landing and brilliant doors and blue lights flashing and little green men walking out with big ears. I haven't seen anything of that sort. That's a lot of malarkey.
But what about this? The alien autopsy, broadcast on the Fox network, supposedly shows an extraterrestrial killed in a 1947 Roswell, New Mexico UFO crash. McGovern says military autopsies then were shot in color, and a still photographer would be seen in the pictures if it were genuine, but no other photographer appears.